Yes.
We're good to go. Well, welcome. I'm Sarah Hadd. I'm your vice chair, but I will be operating, I guess, as chairing the meeting for the day, and I'm from the town of Fairfax. I don't know if we can do a quick go around the room and then we'll do online. Would you like to go?
Sure. Brad Holden, here representing Chittenden County Regional Planning, town administrator under and interim zoning administrator at the moment.
I'm Dana Devlin with staff.
I'm Dick Goff, representative from Lamoille County Planning Commission.
Hi, I'm Erin DeVries, representing Vermont River Conservancy. I believe I'm a voting member.
And we have a couple of guests here too. I don't know if you feel comfortable introducing yourselves, but
I'm Paul McGrath. I bought the Gulf Road Bridge in the Long Branch.
I'm Tori Hallway, I'm here with Megan from LCC.
and then we have Dean.
Dean Pierce, Quist staff.
All right, and Peter, do you want to start the online introductions?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, I was saying, do you want to start the online introductions?
Oh, sure. I mean, I can't, it's because I have a phone, it's gonna be hard, but anyways, I'm Peter Danforth. Lamoille County Conservation District Manager and Chair, the BWIC, Lamoille BWIC.
I'll
Whoever.
people then.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Catherine.
I'm Catherine Sonic, and I'm representing the town of Essex, and I'm an alternate.
Bruce.
Bruce Wheeler, representing Wolcott.
Maddie.
Maddie Ando of NRPC, and I'm Quist staff.
Lauren.
Hi, Lauren Weston. I'm the district manager with the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District, and I'm a voting member, and I use she, her pronouns.
Karen.
Karen Bates, DEC watershed planner for the area, so providing technical assistance to the group.
And Ken.
Good morning, Ken Mink, Georgia Conservation Commission. I'm an alternate, and I'm not sure I can make all 3 hours of the meeting.
And then Casey.
Hi, I'm the district manager for the Winooski NRCD, and I'm not technically alternate yet, but I think that's happening today, so.
And then you're Megan. So I think we're good. All right, so the first order of business is hybrid meeting protocols. Dean, do you want to walk us through?
I'm happy to do that.
I'll start by saying, I think we usually request everybody to keep their cameras on if at all possible, but realizing that we have some people that are remote and under tents and it's raining, so feel free if you need to turn your cameras off. Participate as much as possible, keep yourself on mute until you're ready to participate. And I don't know, what else am I missing?
Well, avoid multitasking and you try to use the raise hand function if you are able to do that, and try to stay muted until called upon. Those are the main ones.
All right. Perfect. And I think remove and review and adjust and approve agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, modifications? Hearing none. Do we usually ask?
Recording in progress. Sorry.
Yeah, Mike and computers off.
Are we good?
Turn the regular microphone off.
Yeah, sorry, I just automatically went to Zoom. Sorry, it's off now.
That's good. Okay, have a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as written. It's Erin.
And a second.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor? All right,
Aye.
all right, it's approved. Approval of minutes. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So
A second?
Second.
All right. I think that was Erin. Any questions comments, changes, modifications? Do we have any hands online? All those in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we have approval of minutes. Do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda? Anybody online? Hearing none, we'll move on to seating of any new reps or alternates. I believe we at least have one.
Yes, that would be Casey,
All right, and Casey is going to be an alternate for,
the Conservation District. She's taking the seat that was previously held by Remy.
all right. So would somebody make a motion to that effect to seat her as an alternate?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Lauren, second it. Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Election of officers. And I think there was some discussion about a slate or not a slate. I'm not sure if I should recuse myself at this point or how should we proceed?
Since you're running the meeting, we don't have to worry about the chair facing the question, should he be running the meeting and overseeing his own election. So if you'd
Yes.
like to just accept any nominations, then you can pass it back to him for the election of the vice chair if you are going to stand.
All right. So would anybody like to serve or nominate to serve a chair?
I nominate Peter Danforth. I second that.
All right. Any questions, comments? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Peter.
Hey, thanks.
I will turn the meeting over to you if that's okay temporarily.
Yeah, so we're going to nominate here a vice chair, perhaps. So in point of order, I guess I would ask if there is anyone who's interested in this position other than what is currently filled. No, I did not hear. All right, do I hear any motions to elect our current chair to our current vice chair, I'm sorry, to this position?
So
Can you hear me?
I make a motion to nominate, and I'm so sorry, I forgot your name.
Sarah.
Sarah
It's
as
okay.
vice chair.
I'll
Maybe
second
some
that.
motion.
All right,
No.
here, I hear a second. Do all in favor of electing Sarah, re-electing Sarah for vice chair, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Oh, congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you. I guess I have to continue on.
Yes, please.
Okay. Is that the, I apologize, is that the slate? Do we don't have a secretary?
There's no secretary.
Okay, so that was it.
That was it.
Okay, perfect. We'll move on
And
to.
then-
Go ahead, Peter.
I think he has,
Sorry, I meant to mute.
Okay. So next we move on to project prioritization. And thank you. I think you guys provided a lot of really detailed information. Dean, I don't know if you'd like to walk us through this or.
I'm happy to tee things up. And one of the things that I might have said at the beginning of this meeting, now that I have the floor, I will say, I hope everybody is safe and secure and recovering if you're affected. We're probably not going to take 3 hours for today's meeting, even though we had scheduled that maybe in weather like we had yesterday. We would dawdle, but I don't think we're going to dawdle, and we probably won't take 2 hours. Although I don't want anybody who's making a presentation on a project to feel rush for time. There's time. But I would like to let people go and be safe by noon if they are able. I also wanted to say it before I forgot, grateful to Megan, the LCPC and Hyde Park for allowing us to use this space. But in terms of project prioritization, what I thought I would do is give an at a glance overview and touch on some of the high points of the applications and then let the applicants go in turn. And I do understand that Peter and his application would go first because of his time constraint. But the high points, there was the call for applications that was issued on May 19th and the deadline was July 7th. 7 applications received. Approval is recommended. I think I've got my number wrong. That may have carried over from before. That number is not right. 4 applications received. Copy paste bubble. 2 from the LCCD, 1 from the Lamoille County Planning Commission, and 1 from Hyde Park. Approval, even though I got the number wrong, is recommended. As I will say a little bit later, it's conceivable there will need to be some tweaks. One of the things that I have seen happen with this process is that there are applications that look like they will be okay. We have reason to believe that they're fully eligible, but things could happen. And I'm saying that that might be the case with some of these applications. We just don't know. Questions have been put by me to DEC staff to at least start the ball rolling in terms of getting clarification, but I'll touch on that. The requested amounts range from about $5,000 to $45,000. And unlike the last round where there was a project development application, these applications are for preliminary design and final design. There are no applications that would be going straight to implementation. The application subjects, there are road related designs, there's floodplain restoration, and there's a dam removal project. The phosphorus reduction that's associated with these applications spans a large range from 3.4 kilograms to 94 plus. Very large phosphorus calculation using the phosphorus calculator. I also just wanted to touch on cost effectiveness. I have the list of projects here, and it's these are all estimates. The cost estimates are estimates. The phosphorus numbers are estimates. But if we apply those, the cost per kilogram reduction ranges from about $1,500 to about $15,000. The historic, well, up until a few years ago, historic rate for a kilogram of phosphorus reduction is in the neighborhood of 14 to 15,000. So that's somewhat typical. These are not exceptionally high or even very high cost on a per kilogram basis. This is the order of ranking using the prioritization system that has been developed, but since we are recommending that all of the applications be approved, my advice is that you take them in turn and you start with the Gulf Road, then Lacasse, then Centerbrook, and then West Loop Road. This is a table that people are not going to be able to read, but it was included in the materials. I think I may just leave it to the applicants to describe their projects, and you will have this as resource material, and we can also pull things back. The table may help people as a reference, but if you would like to, if you don't have it available, if you're here and you can't pull it up on the screen, then we can pull it up on the screen. I think, Peter, I would turn things over to you. I have the meeting packet. If there are certain parts of the packet that you would like to refer to, or if you would like to do it some other way, just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to kind of go over the general overview on both the grants proposals we submitted, and sort of clarify some questions people may have in regards to that. So the first one being Lacasse Road. So they're both both of these projects that I've submitted came out of the Lake Elmore Watershed Action Plan. So the Lacoste Road one is a fairly simple stormwater improvement. And it's in the upper watershed of the lake. So it's, it's further up more near the pond. And on the surface, this looks like a MRGP project because it's off of a public road and it drains. So stormwater that's draining off of it into a tributary going to the Elmore Pond. But when I talked to the Planning Commission and some of my folks at DEC and showed them the scope of the design, they realized that this is a project that goes above and beyond the MRGP requirements. And so they thought it'd be okay to move forward with recommending trying to get money from the QUISP program to fund at least the final design. Now, once we get into implementation phase, things will get a little trickier. Obviously, we don't want to put money from the QUISP into anything that would be a road improvement that would be required under the MRGP. But we would in the next phase ask for money to implement those stormwater features that are outside the row, as well as being above and beyond what the MRGP would require for the town. So that's sort of a summary of, in a test to this group of what can be funded and what can't be. And so I'll leave it up to everyone. If they have any questions on that, please let me take questions now on that project before I go on to the next.
Dean, where is this map in the packet?
Page 30.
This particular one,
Thank you. Yes, yeah, because I'm,
it's page 30 of 208.
got it.
This one?
Yeah, yep.
So for detail, if I can recall, so there's catchment systems, stone aprons and tiered stone structures that would be on either side of the road to catch stormwater, mostly outside the row before it enters the tributary. That is the primary treatment. And then there's also just general ditching that the town would do, but maybe a little bit more enhanced than what is required from the MRGP. And so yes, I'll take more questions.
Karen has her hand.
Karen?
So Peter, one question I have is so are you asking that the design for the full project be funded through QUISP funding?
I suppose, because it might be just easier to do so in one, considering the price tag and ease of bureaucratic orchestration, or maybe not, I don't know. I think that would be, maybe that's something that the state needs to, like yourself, could ask. But I would prefer that it would just get funded because, we're very familiar with this particular, our engineers are very familiar with this project. And I think trying to divvy it up between town and design it'll just kind of complicate matters. I'd rather just have one design, and then from there, in the portion of the design that would be an MRGP would probably be a very small fraction compared to what the major treatment is. It would just be kind of in some ways a footnote. So I don't know. I mean, it's up to you if you think that's appropriate or not. But I just feel that we shouldn't really get to splitting up the difference until we get to implementation. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Clean Water Funds can pay for a design of the MRGP work.
Okay.
So that would be the question. I also, one thing to keep in mind is the whole point behind the MRGP is that it's all sort of back of the envelope design, right?
Yeah.
You use the back roads manual to the road foreman can do it.
Okay.
And so to then ask an engineer to do it, it just ups the cost. So
okay.
one idea would be, you could, yeah, I'm not sure how to do it, but I would do it separately. I would do it separately with the assumption that the engineer would then design the ponds and the level spreader.
Yeah.
So that's the additional work, right?
Yeah, so what if we were to, I would just ask the designer to do that, and then could they just make a reference to the fact that other things could be done, you know, or not, you know, whatever you think would be appropriate.
If they're looking at like the watershed that this is the source of the water, I think what they should be doing is assuming that the work was done or is done. So this is the second step. I think also this has to be the second step.
Okay, okay, that's clear.
Yeah, and then, you know, if they know they have to, there's going to be a ditch that's going to be built according to the back roads manual, and these other things, and they can use that to calculate then requirements for the pond and the level spreader.
Okay. That's how I'll approach it if this is approved.
So how much?
Any more? Go ahead.
We have another question.
Yeah.
How much are we asking for on this project?
Peter, remind me.
Unfortunately, it would take me a bit to figure that out. If you could pull that up, that would be great.
This looks like 8,899 for the first.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So that price might.
Amount
Go
of requested is
8,000.
7,899.
And that might go down depending on the scale here.
And how much phosphorus does this project?
About 4 kilograms.
Is that for the 4 kilograms is for the total implementation, not just for the design?
Right.
And we understand that, okay.
So it.
Sorry, Karen? Follow-up
So
question?
I was, in response to the answer that this, the phosphorus reduction is based on the entire project.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, wouldn't we have to include? Well, I suppose that we wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, we are trying to limit phosphorus. So if you think that we should take that number from the ditches out of that, we could do so in the future. And then, of course, this is a final design and not implementation, so those numbers could change anyways.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is that your
Credit.
work funds the non-regulatory work, and we know the regulatory work is going to get done, and we know sort of what we expect from that. So really the only thing we're looking at with the QUISPs is what's the phosphorus reduction from non-regulatory work.
Right. And I can't answer that question because
Megan?
we'd have to reevaluate the drainage area.
Peter, Megan has a question.
I just want to add, I mean, let's just remember everything's connected here. So I'm not sure. You can try to parse out numbers like that, but at the end of the day, the watershed and the drainage area is connected regardless of whether it's regulatory or non-regulatory. So I think we need to like give that some more consideration.
I do understand what Karen's saying, though. It's just who's credited where, right? They have to tally that stuff just for, but yeah, Megan, that's true.
Karen, you still have your hand up?
Yeah, so I can add on to that, Megan. So I think the idea here is that if you want to know the phosphorus reduction for all the work that's been done in the watershed, that would be, you could go to the our data, which would be, yeah, we have that data, so we can provide that to you. So it is collected. You don't have to collect that. We're doing that already. And so we'll take into account the regulatory work, phosphorus reductions, and the non-regulatory. And that would be part of our performance report.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it'd probably be more in the database. So if you guys would like that, we can provide it.
All right, I'm going to call Dean next.
Yeah, I want to, I guess, echo a sentiment that I'm hearing in Megan's comment. As the QUISP, we are the QUISP. But Karen's the basin planner, but the NRPC is the QUISP for this basin, and you folks are all the basin council. I understand from a conversation with Peter that some aspects of these applications, it was understood that there could be some rough sledding because of the lack of a clear policy from DEC about what's eligible and what's not. And the position of the QUISP is that we're supportive of an application, even if there are these questions, if it will help result in the clarification of the process of the policies. And so when I spoke earlier and said there could be some tweaks, that slide had tweaks, addressing this issue squarely is one of the things that I had in mind. And in fact, it's not that Karen will have the data on the phosphorus reduction, it's that the QUISP, as the project advances, it's part of my job. I'm going to be feeding numbers to DEC, and those numbers will finally be booked when the project is closed out. So all of this stuff is tentative. We don't know what the phosphorus numbers are going to be until the project is complete. This is a design project. The numbers are speculative anyway. If there is the need for the budget to be adjusted downward because we hear from DEC that it would be inappropriate for the QUISP to fund some portion of it. Now, I would say that if the MRGP portion is something that the road person can do on the back of an envelope, that portion is going to be rather small. And whether or not it actually does have to be staged and implemented in series or it could be done as part of one project, I'm not sure that there is an unequivocal answer to that question, but I guess I'm getting a little bit, I'm trying to stress that there is funding available for projects. This is one that we are looking at it in a favorable light by considering the total phosphorus. Ditches don't reduce, in and of themselves, don't reduce much phosphorus. So I don't think the number is going to change very much, and that the QUISP is prepared still to recommend this project, even if there are some questions like these, which we will make sure are addressed by the time dollars are spent to implement the project or to start paying people. In other words, before the contracts are signed and an engineer is committed, or whoever the professional designer is committed to do the work. Hopefully that helps.
And this is a preliminary design, so that is subject to change. And just as a point of order to come back to, which I perhaps should have asked before we started, is I believe the last time we went through this is we voted on each project after it was presented. Is that still the wish of everybody here today? Is that what you'd suggest for?
Yes, yeah, there was some question, and I'll touch on this a little bit later about slates, but the DEC's clarified policy is to do things individually. We're not in a place where that's a problem.
All right. So
There's a question.
yes,
I was looking through all this and I got quite confused. Like on page 35
Page 35 of the PDF.
of the, yeah. Right there. Now, I was expecting those little dots for yes and no to be filled in. You know, I thought this was a questionnaire that had to be answered.
Yeah, and I don't know if the problem was in copying things into a single PDF.
sometimes that happens,
Yeah.
or printing of annotated PDF.
Yeah, not copy over.
Because this portion shows, but perhaps Peter can just assure the group that it's his understanding it's an eligible project type and it meets the definitions, etc.
So Peter, I think the document that we're looking at is your number 4. under
2,
the
I think.
application, under the appendix A, is that? 4A, natural resource impacts about Act 250, shorelands, rivers, flood areas, fish and wildlife. That questionnaire, if that's ringing a bell, it's not appearing as being filled out as part of the application.
Water thing on, you want to.
So did I not check a box or something? Is that what you're saying?
The whole application is not showing any indication of yes or no.
The screening form.
But there's a warning on the PDF and you see it's a fillable field. You may not be seeing all
I'm comfortable with somebody saying it really was filled in correctly.
So the
You don't have to tell me the answer.
eligibility criteria,
Yeah, I filled it in correctly. I remember filling it all in, so I don't know why it's coming up blank.
And it may be that it's because of being pulled into a single PDF.
right,
That's what I have. I don't recall. I mean,
It's
So
a
that's
technical
something-
problem. That's what,
as long as it was filled out and Dean has a record at some place or it can be resent, PDFs can get wonky when they're.
and the second part of my question is on page 36. Under the WPDID, it says Gulf Road Bridge replacement. But wasn't that the other project?
So when we pulled everything into one PDF, some things may have gotten a little bit wonky.
that's
Okay.
what,
So these are just technical issues that,
yes.
okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for the close read. Any other questions or comments on this project?
Yeah, I'll be sure to send copies again if those aren't showing filled.
It's okay, Peter, I don't need it.
Okay, all right.
As a,
Yes, I will, I don't have access to the original folder here, but we will get together to make sure that it.
Okay. So just to warn you all, I am at the Lamoille County Field Days, and I think they're gonna blast the national anthem soon. It's really loud. And so that if that happens, I'm going to mute, and that's why I'm muting. Okay. But in the meantime, any more questions on Lacasse Road?
I'd entertain a motion if not.
I'll move that we approve this project
Is there a
for
second?
the $8,000 and
Preliminary design.
Oh, final
A
final
second.
design.
All right, so we have a second. Any questions or comments from anybody online? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All the ayes have it. Very good, Peter. You can mute yourself for the time being, except I see you have the second one too, so I don't know.
Peter abstain.
Yeah. I'll mute if this starts to happen.
Did you abstain from the vote?
Yes.
Yes, he abstained. Here's another possibility is if Peter has to mute himself, is do you want to take something out of order and move on to Megan's? Or I think Peter did have a hard stop at 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's as long as whatever the national anthem, how long that is.
All right. You
So
want-
it's not terribly long, but I can start now and hopefully get it in.
All right.
Okay, so West Loop Road is a private road that's a loop that comes off starts off Beach Road and then which is a town road, and then it does a single lane until it loops around in front of the lake on the north shore of Elmore, or north, I should say, northwest side of Elmore. And there's numerous projects that were ID'd along this road in the Lake Elmore Watershed Action Plan. But one thing I noticed while studying it quite a bit over the years, and especially with the landowners, it's just riddled with issues. It's the wrong material. It floods out a lot. There's a lot of sediment and phosphorus loading that goes through people's front yards into the lake from these events. And so there's been a lot of talk to see what we could do to correct that. And so we decided, and I've been working with Karen a bit on this as well, to figure out how to market as a project. So a little history, when we were doing the assessment, I worked with the landowners and did a training in which we showed them how to do road erosion inventories. And so the neighbors actually all got around and they did the road erosion inventory pretty much in the entirety of the loop using the MRGP sheets back in the day. So this is about 3 years ago. And most of the, REI came up with the fact that none of the road was actually up to standard, according to the MRGPs. And so with that said, I'm like, okay, so let's go ahead and use that have an engineer come in to do a preliminary design, maybe rescope the ERI, the road erosion inventory, just to double check that they were correct. And then come up with a list of corrections to this preliminary design that would prevent sediment and phosphorus loading, and generally, help the condition of the road in the process of doing so. Now, one thing I got to note is that I had to kind of shoot from the hip when it came to what the actual phosphorus loading would be, because okay. Does everyone hear that, or can I keep talking?
Keep talking.
Okay, it's not as loud as I thought it was going to be. I should be standing in attention, but I'll have my hand to my heart. So what we'd like to do is, yes, a preliminary design to determine what the best corrections would be. And I'm sure the phosphorus loading number is going to change somewhat. We basically determined this prediction based off what the state uses in MRGP phosphorus loading for private roads, which is fortunately on the list for the phosphorus calculator. And so honestly, the price tag of a final implementation, it was definitely a shoot from the hip scenario on my part. So I don't know. I know it would correct a lot according to the phosphorus loading. Right now it's ranked 4th, but God knows where it will be once the preliminary design is finished. So anyways, I'll take questions now. That will help me with the narrative.
Any questions in the room?
So the project is for a preliminary design, is that right, Peter?
Yeah, so right now, as a project ID, it's titled REI and preliminary design. And Karen and I are working on that title as a project ID, because I know that REIs are not necessarily funded via the QUIS, but this is ultimately a preliminary design. And what we're trying to do is verify what the landowners already did for the REI, if that makes sense.
Any other questions in the room? Any questions, Megan?
So I'm just asking this, Peter, so that I understand for clarification. So the difference here in terms of eligibility is that this is a private road. It's not,
Yes.
not a municipal road where MRGP would apply. And therefore that's why it's eligible. Because I know
Correct.
I have asked, I think Dean in the past, trying to seek funding for, municipal REIs, because there's just not that same level of funding from V-Trans as there used to be, but that would not, the municipal roads REI would not be eligible under QUIS, but the private is. Is that correct, Dean?
Yeah, this is entirely a private road loop. I mean,
Peter?
there is a, hello?
I'm gonna let Dean.
Yeah, I have seen some email traffic that concerns the availability of REI funds. I think maybe coming this fall, or an announcement coming this fall. Karen may be able to get the specifics, but it would be basin program funds. But what I understood from a conversation with Peter is that this one's sort of different in a couple of ways. One, it's private, and that there was something like an REI done, and that work will be checked as part of this, but it's not really an REI. And so maybe if we had called it something else, we wouldn't even be, worried about it.
Peter, do you have any follow-up on that? Sorry, I cut you off, but Peter or Dean wanted to take that. Dean, answer that well enough for you?
Is that, I'm sorry, what is that?
I apologize to sort of cut you off to let Dean explain, but did he answer that well enough for you?
Yeah, he did. Exactly. It's the output, the final output or deliverable of this would be a preliminary design. That's the important thing to remember. The REI aspect is just a verification on the engineer's part that the REI that was complete is valid.
All right.
And I can tell you it is, just from my own experience.
Actually,
Karen.
I have a question. What
Yes.
does REI stand for?
Road erosion inventory.
Thank you. And what about MRGP?
Municipal roads, general permit.
Thank you. What was that REI again? Road erosion
Erosion.
inventory. Thank
Which
you.
we're in the process of a new inventory, so that
Sorry for all the acronyms.
all MRT segments get reevaluated every 5 years.
Okay.
So that municipal roads general permit is part of the state's general permit to municipalities saying that you have to have so many of your roads. I think it was of the list, like it was like 15% of your roads had to be in compliance by this coming.
Last year.
this
Last.
last.
Okay.
Time flies when you're having.
Okay. Thank you.
And you had a question?
Yeah, so this would be a formalization of the initial informal. Road inventory. Is that,
So this is a private road, from what I understand, so it was sort of exempt from municipal road inventory work.
right, but he said that homeowners had, you know.
They're
gotten
using,
together.
they're using the matrix of the rule of that municipalities follow for stormwater runoff, the road erosion inventory, like rubric, to come up with their data,
That's
is
good.
what I understand.
Okay, so they would go through a different process.
Go through a set of questions, you know, it's,
They're using municipal process for themselves. The road does not fall because it's not municipal, it's a private road.
Okay, so, but this, what he's proposing now would be a road inventory at a different time. I mean, that's what I'm.
You want to take, Karen?
Yeah, so I want to clarify something. They did it, we did a training, but both the district and actually the planning commission was there to help. And we, you know, I personally did a lot of supervision of what the landowners were doing. So that, you know, it was a valid erosion inventory from my perspective. And it was done from a training from both the planning commission and the district. So there's a bit, so some clout there behind it. So I just want to clarify that.
and then what you said, Peter, too, you're gonna have the engineering firm or confirm the data you collected, right?
That is correct.
All right, and Peter, you still have your hand up?
No, I was waving goodbye to someone.
Okay. You have your virtual hand up too, so, but.
Oh, I do? I can't even see that.
Karen, you have your virtual hand up.
Yes, I do. So one thing I was going to suggest is based on the discussion that happened at the Basin 5 WIC around a road inventory type thing is that they're not, if this group does not want to fund culvert replacement for stormwater that's running through, because that has a very low phosphorus to dollar ratio, then that might be, I don't know if the group can say, have caveats in the approval of this project, but that might be one of them. And two, the idea that I think there's also some runoff coming up from above that's causing problems and erosion. And maybe that's the focus of a stormwater design, because that's not MRGP. MRGP does not control the runoff that's coming onto the road. It just makes sure that the runoff that gets on the road doesn't erode it or erode the edges of it. So that might be a way to specify what designs are needed, because again, an MRGP fix is the back of the envelope. If you need a rock line ditch, then you go to the back, you know, the contractor can go to the back roads manual and figure out sizing.
Can I have a comment on that here?
Peter, do you want to have a quick follow-up, and then we have a question in the room?
Yeah, and Karen, I think you're correct. I'm just wondering though, because this is a private road and isn't under the MRGP, that would still disqualify any sort of works as ditching or culvert replacement as part of the design. I just want to get some clarity on that. I know we'll do, I know out of design, there would probably be a number of features outside of the actual road. Catchment systems and systems to prevent stormwater entering the road and off of it. But I'm just curious if those MRGP standards still would apply to a private road in terms of funding from state funds.
Oh, yeah, no, if it's a private road, they can do, you use the MRGP criteria to help you understand what to fix and how to fix it, and then also to contribute how to calculate phosphorus reduction, because you can do it by identifying or moving a road from not meeting to meeting, and then get phosphorus reduction. So, and the only reason I added the culvert was that's just do you want to put money into design for a culvert replacement when in the end we all know, well, that's going to be a really high, maybe low priority in the end for the group.
Right. I guess, yeah, I'm curious because, if this is a preliminary design, we certainly want to hit, everything we can with that if allowable through the funding that we get. I guess wouldn't those concerns maybe come up more in the final design?
Yeah. If it's not, just as long as they don't spend time doing a 30% design on a culvert replacement, when they could be doing a 30% design on the settling basin or the whatever it would be.
We're doing another project up in Eden, and one of the primary issues with that private road is the culverts and replacing the culverts, and they are the primary factor leading to issues with loading and flooding. So that's why I guess maybe we can I'd love to talk to you more about that, because now I'm kind of, we should talk about that.
Peter, I'm gonna
yeah.
have a question in the room that I wanted to get to.
Okay.
So my understanding is that the engineering generated road inventory is necessary before going on to some kind of final design, but the informal one that Peter supervised was not, specific enough or formalized enough. Is that correct?
Peter, is that fair?
Well, I added it because I thought it would be a fair thing to do, so that it has a stamp, right? I don't think it's required, but because it's a private road, but I did it because I thought it would, gain more trust from the funding.
Thank you.
I just have two questions. So is the town highway listed to the west contributing to any of the runoff into the private road?
I'm sorry, that was kind of garbled. I couldn't quite hear them.
So the town road that is to the west, the town highway, looks like a town highway. Is that contributing to the runoff coming down into this private road?
Yeah, so there is some contribution there, and there is a project that's been brought to 30% design right on that corner. But I decided to not bring that one to the Quist or the BWIC, because when I looked at the phosphorus loading for that single project, it didn't seem, efficient as compared to some of the other projects that we have. So I really wanted to look at the whole road instead, but there would be elements of design there, probably at the corner, outside of the row of the MRGP.
And then the last thing is that area you show as hydric soil, that's probably all gonna extend into class 2 wetland, probably from the north.
Yeah, well, so there is a class 2 wetland you can see mapped from the ANR atlas, but I know that if you were to reassess it and look, there's more than just that area. It would probably be delineated, and I think I would definitely I have Shannon on board to help with that for going forward from the state.
Yeah,
But that will be an additional cost, sorry.
Will it be an additional cost? I not at this stage. but maybe moving forward to an implementation or something.
So not as far as prelim.
Yeah, for preliminary design, we're probably going through the permitting. You know, we determine what sort of permitting would come with the certain features that we're proposing.
Ask Shannon to come down and give a jurisdictional opinion for free probably, and then go.
Yeah, I work with her a lot in these things, and she will come and visit with us and the engineers and sort of, you know, draw up what we need to do moving forward. And yeah, that's not like a paid cost or anything. That's state funded.
Any other questions for Peter? Any other questions online? I would enter Dean.
Maybe more of a comment. I did want to acknowledge and support something that Karen was saying, or at least bring it up again, and her suggestion that there be some caveats, and I don't know if that would take the form of a condition if the maker of the motion wanted to do that, but yes, it is important to understand that it doesn't make sense to fund the design of things that are either not going to be eligible, and that's something that further discussions at DEC will help clarify. But even if they're eligible, I think the point is being made that these things like culverts are not going to have much phosphorus benefit. So even though we can justify, or the WIC and the QUIS may be able to justify investing the funds in the design when the day comes and the request is made to implement, if the phosphorus credits are really small and the cost is really high, we might have supported the design, but we can't support the implementation. So the designer who's engaged to do this work, and they're not all of us engineers, but the designer should in fact focus on the things that are going to be better at reducing phosphorus, and not culvert replacements, and not things that we would, normally consider maintenance. So that's just one point. And then Karen's recognition of understanding the area that's contributing. If there is an area that's contributing, that's driving some of the problem, well, that needs to be recognized as well. So I wanted to give her due on that.
Can I make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would recommend that if for the vote, perhaps the caveat would be that on both of these projects, I know we've already voted on the last one, but that LCCD would work closely with our tactical basin planner and our designer to find those elements, that would be qualified for this future funding. Does that make sense?
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Would somebody suggest a motion that would be?
I think somebody was writing that down.
Thinking. I think it really boils down to the question of confirming eligibility. So if the work is in fact eligible, it's eligible. So it could be that the motion says you recommend approval of the funding. Procurement will not occur until after the eligibility of the work is confirmed. And if there are parts of ineligibility, then they wouldn't be included.
So moved.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'd second it.
Questions, comments? Changes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstaining? Peter, can I note you as being abstaining? I see a head nod.
Yes.
Very good. All right, we'll proceed to, which one's next? Centerville Brook.
Could we do golf? Sorry.
Yes.
Could we do Golf Road? I think that was going to be the first one. Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah, I
to
was
go
working on the
first?
spreadsheet as
Oh, okay.
opposed to now I'm,
Yeah,
So-
Paul is here too, and we might have time. to think.
so the Gulf Road Bridge,
Yes,
we'll
please.
take that one next.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, by the way. Thank you. I'm going to go off to the field days now. Have a good one.
Bye.
Could somebody just say what page it is on the document?
Actually, Megan is gonna do
Nine,
some,
okay.
yeah, but,
Megan will pull it up for us.
and I also just wanted to confirm, is Emily here? I think Emily is going to move into
Yep, I'm here,
a. Okay.
just with a 3-year-old in and out, so that's why my video's off.
So the minutes will show that with Peter gone, Emily is a voter.
So we still have one.
We have more than a quorum.
Okay,
but-
very good.
Can you allow me to screen share? please?
Oh, I thought I. You should be able to.
There we go. Okay, looks like it worked on our end.
You guys can also take this. They're all a little bit tethered.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, can folks online hear me okay? I got a thumbs up from Lauren, okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, just wanted to check. I apologize in advance. My voice is a little choppy. I managed to re-injure a torn ligament in my throat, so that's fun. So I just want to say sorry in advance if it kind of goes in and out a little bit. So I just have a couple of slides I wanted to show. And there's a quick video that Paul McGrath, who's here with us in the audience, also took of the recent flooding that I did want to share with you all. And then after I just provide a little bit of context. If Paul has anything he wants to add, since he's here with us today, certainly give him that opportunity and, you know, open it up for questions afterwards. So yeah, so the project that we're proposing is for preliminary design. It would encompass, you know, it's floodplain restoration, alternatives, flood mitigation. You know, upsizing the bridge is really just, it's one component of that, but there's also opportunity for things like, you know, look at other alternatives like floodplain benches and really looking at floodplain reconnectivity. We were requesting $44,000. So I got that estimate from SLR Consulting. And so they estimated that 40,000 of that it would be for the preliminary design of, you know, floodplain restoration, flood mitigation alternatives in this stretch of the Wild Branch that has experienced flooding in the past and most recently as well. And then the 4,000 of that, it would be basically LCPC providing some grant management support. That's the additional 4,000. Let's see. Okay, I gotta do the from the beginning thing. There we go. Now it should work. Now we should just be able to go. Okay. So this was included in the packet. This is the A&R locator map. That shows you the different layers and such as the floodplain and the corridor. You can see the bridge is right there. You know, it's not far up. You go up North Walcott Road and you get onto Gulf Road, and you know, it's that first bridge right there. With the Wild Branch running under it. And then let's see if we can get the next slide. So that's just giving you some context. So yeah, the bridge is definitely currently undersized. Both kind of the floodplain restoration aspect and also looking at flood mitigation and potentially upsizing the bridge was something that was flagged per se or identified when SLR Consulting we and LCPC, we contracted together to support the town to basically just, they did an initial look at North Walcott Road, and they were looking for, erosion prone areas, flood prone locations along the Wild Branch. And opportunities to mitigate erosion, mitigate flooding, provide more floodplain connectivity, that sort of thing. So they took an initial look up and down North Walcott Road, and this location, Gulf Road, was one of the ones that they flagged in particular. And this really kind of builds on, there's been some other work along North Walcott Road too. There's been some channel restoration downstream on the Fish and Wildlife parcel. And the town of Walcott is currently exploring some floodplain restoration up near the North Walcott Recreation Fields. So north of here. So this really, think of it as, it's really building on past efforts as well, in terms of looking at floodplain connectivity, flood mitigation, and trying to reduce erosion and, of course, phosphorus loading. This, I don't know if that's coming up okay. I guess it's coming up okay. This was also included in the packet. This is just a 10% design. So it's very, very preliminary in nature. Like, it's conceptual, I guess that's the best way to put it. It's a conceptual design is what came out of the flood mitigation evaluation when SLR is kind of exploring up and down the Wild Branch along North Walcott Road. And as you'll see, there is a river corridor easement. And so Paul's here, he's one of the abutting landowners, and I know Aaron, is aware of that easement. In the past, when we had a site visit, gosh, it was like a year ago, with partners, Steve Libby was still the executive director at that point, so he joined us. And so, yeah, so we did an initial look at it, and we're interested in further exploring, floodplain restoration, also, looking at that in combination of potentially upsizing the grid. But I think a lot of different kind of alternatives need to be explored here, because one thing that Paul pointed out to me earlier today is that the way the Wild Branch flooded this time around recently was a little different from what happened in the 2019 Halloween storm. So, and I'll show you some photos. We'll do a video clip soon,
I
but
don't know if you want me to, sorry.
you can do,
On this, kind of just show on this
sure.
what's happened in 2019 and then what happened now. I don't know if that's helpful. Sure.
Yeah, will they be able to see
So-
Paul? Folks who are online.
So
So just as a thing, is the folks online probably won't be able to see the detail of what you're pointing to, so if you could just verbally walk us through what you're pointing to as you're going. that'd be great.
So I didn't own the property, so Vermont River Conservancy obviously has an easement on this, in here. In
And Paul-
2019,
I think, did you want Tim to introduce himself, or did you have a question?
Megan might be able to point with the cursor where he's
While
pointing.
he's
Oh,
doing it.
okay.
Good idea.
So in 2019, and I do have flood pictures,
I'll link
if
it.
you guys want them, that one of the locals had given me.
Sorry, hold
At some
on.
point.
Go back.
But in 2019, basically the bridge plugged. And there wasn't anyone, the house I bought, this is my cabin here, so it was a part-time residence, so no one was here to see kind of what was happening up to it. The bridge plugged, which we're lucky it didn't plug this time. I don't know how it didn't, but the bridge plugged, and so the full force of everything came over the bridge and basically down. This is a straightaway here, and then it kind of turns up here, but basically took out this whole road. And the bridge was scoured. I have pictures of it. The bridge was scoured, with concrete down this, probably 3-4 feet. This time, basically what happened, and we were looking at, because when I bought the property, I was like, okay, if this is gonna happen, today's gonna be the day. This starts up in this back corner, which is eroding, and we talked about it with BRC. This here upstream floods first. And so that starts coming into the field here. But what happens is there's a pile of ledge right here on the corner. And what happens is it's coming down, it obviously churns in this section here, comes around, hits the pile of ledge right here. And basically comes up over into the field. It's that ledge is protecting further erosion here, but this, we probably lost a good, and you'll see it today, probably a good foot or two here. When it gets down to this end here, basically what happens is, as you come down, it blows through. This is pretty low in here. And it blows through this here, comes across the field, across my driveway, basically comes around in this area because the road is a foot or two above the fields. And so it hits the berm of the road and runs down here, across the driveway, circles back around, then goes over the road here. So in the current storm, only this section here of the road got taken out. In 2019, this whole section here was taken out because the full force of it when it plugged up. It never plugged up this storm, but it eventually, I'd say it started flooding back here 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. By 7 o'clock that night, and the videos that I had sent to town that you have a copy or two of have timestamps on them.
Yep.
By the time it hit up here, it took about a half an hour for you starting to see water here, for it to basically flood this whole section to here, an hour at most. And that is probably an hour or two before it even hit the bridge. And so it only peaked and hit the bridge, which is about 6 to 8 feet from its original size. It probably flowed over the bridge for about an hour, maybe 2. Because by the time it was dark, this happened at somewhere in I don't know the exact numbers, 7:30, 8:30, somewhere in there. By the time it was dark, this still hadn't reached the bridge. And so unless the bridge is plugged, which is a 50-50 shot, you're not going to get this total destruction on the whole section. It's going to come here, run here, and it by 1, 2 in the morning, it had already receded because the bridge wasn't plugged. So, which I think is different from the perception from 4 years ago. And if it does plug, it's a whole different scenario, and it just takes out the whole thing, which, you know.
Are you contemplating lowering the road?
I'm not an engineer, but it's something where I think the bridge needs to be lengthened. And so there are also, which isn't part, but I do want to bring it up, isn't part of probably this board's gig, but there are traffic issues that are also that I think, Megan, I think you've been involved in the traffic studies.
Yeah, LCPC did some, I don't have the numbers on hand, but we did some current traffic studies, traffic counts on Gulf Road this past season,
So there's basically, and I actually have them. There's 300 cars a day that go over this bridge. And because what's happened over, and so this turns into, this project has turned into something where obviously it's flood mitigation and, you know, fixing things, right? But also I've been dealing with the town. The only reason I found out about this project was dealing with the town on traffic studies and traffic, you know, I had actually contacted LCPC to try, because there's so much traffic coming over this, and they have recently taken off the overweight postings. And so now North Woket Road, you literally have tractor trailers coming over this bridge because they're cutting off, you know, coming from North Woket and Craftsbury, and they don't want to go down here, or they don't want to go through Hardwick.
What's the inspection report, V-Trans inspection report?
That the last one that I was told about is told that the bridge prior to this could handle it. But it also comes down to the dynamic of this road has changed in the last 12 months. And so it's way heavier traffic, but also now you've got where this flood happened in a totally different way, and the bridge had nothing to do with it. And it floods prior to that, which it's my land. You know, I don't want to say I knew that going into it. However, it literally, my feeling is, it cuts in here and then runs back right through here, so I don't know that a culvert on one end of the bridge would eliminate all this and taking out the road. But also the bridge does have to be, I mean, it's, you know,
It's fairly
it needs to be
undersized.
lengthened, it's something where it does plug out, or it will plug out. I mean, if we
Right.
get anything close to what. So,
Okay. I have
Where does Gulf
more
Road
slides.
end? Where,
on Route 15, it's basically intersect 15 where, Elmore Pond Road
oh,
cuts out.
so they're trying to get maybe to Elmore Pond Road easily or in a quicker way? Is
Well-
that is why there's more of an increase in traffic?
Well, part of it is, so Gulf Road was a 6-ton posted, the bridge 10 years ago. Gulf Road was posted at 6 tons because of the bridge. It was done by the select board. I went to the select board a year ago and basically opened up a can of worms that, okay, you got 70,000-pound trucks going over this bridge. And so somehow, some way, last summer, they decided that we're gonna rescind the posting. And you also have gravel, it's Lamoille Valley Aggregates, but it's gravel construction, had their pit and has had it for the last, whatever, 10 years, down at the other end of Gulf Road. And so literally on a daily basis, if they're running and other trucks are running back and forth, you could have 40 to 50 trips of tracks and dump trucks that are 70,000-pound rigs when they're full, running back and forth over this bridge. I asked the town to reduce, which this is a bit of a tangent, but reduce the speed limit to 25 miles an hour, which is why the road study was starting to be done with LCPC.
So I'm just gonna pull a little bit, just for the sake of time, a little bit this back on tracks in
Right.
terms of the traffic, I think speaks to how this is an important component. But I think we are taking a look at the phosphorus loading, the floodplain impacts, things of that nature. And just a quick question I have on this is, in looking through, and I apologize, I think it was with all of the PDFs that got pulled in, the yes, no answers are
Yeah, and
vacant.
they are in the original. I can confirm that.
Okay, and just wondering if a hydrology study was done on this by any fans, or that was something that was recommended, I'm not sure if it's
I
been
have to
requested
look
or
into that.
in terms of appropriate sizing of the bridge for the future. So,
Right.
I can just say one thing, as far as the bridge, the reason I'm talking about the traffic in general. That is something that I don't know what phase or what part of, you know, it obviously doesn't have to do with any phosphorus. You know, as far as the traffic side of it, but. It will, as far as the plan and design. It is going to, because there is. You have to take that into consideration as far as size of the bridge, what they're doing, depending on what the town decides to do with the road, which. Megan probably has way more input on that. On that
so
end.
this is a preliminary design, and so what a lot of that does is meant to do is really identify. What additional permits you're gonna need, issues such as what you just identified, which is great to identify early on. But as part of the final design, you would take a look at that sort of vehicle trip ends, weight loading and all those sort of additional issues and trajectories and curvatures. And a whole lot more. So we're early on in the process, which is really great if you can identify those. But in terms of how we have to evaluate that, it's really going to be on more of the ecological than the personal safety and traffic. Question.
Yeah, so what is a floodplain bench?
It's a benchmark, it's a reference mark.
No, just where the floodplain goes.
I don't, it's a reference mark that you would use to determine the floodplain. So I'm assuming this is a zone.
Approximate,
AE.
maybe?
No,
Well, I think they meant, so in this case, and again, this is just conceptual. All of this could change, you know, in preliminary design, but the floodplain benching was just like a potential to, you know, lower the floodplain, provide floodplain connectivity. You know, opportunity for that, and so that was thrown in there as a, you know, as potentially an important component to floodplain restoration and allow, you know, floodwaters to dissipate a little bit more, allow the energy to dissipate a little more and sediment to drop out. So that's what That's what, when they say
Okay,
floodplain
sorry.
fences, that's actually what's a reference.
Different thing, okay.
Yeah,
So,
Sorry.
Um, and I have a couple more slides, if I could get through those quickly before, if that's okay.
Please. I think Ken just. As a quick,
Um,
let's get through your slides and then we'll go back to questions.
yeah, so we kind of already started to talk about some of this, you know, the project goals, looking at floodplain restoration, flood mitigation alternatives. You know, upsizing the bridge may be part of it, but obviously there's other alternatives you might want to consider, whether it's like, you know, lowering the road or, you know, other alternatives that actually reduce flooding, erosion and phosphorus loading in the area, but also increase floodplain connectivity, because there is currently limited floodplain connectivity in this area. So we'd be looking to increase flood storage capacity and reduce that overall erosion scouring along the bank near the bridge, and of course reduce phosphorus loading. I don't have many more slides, I promise. So this was in the packet. You know, you have the spreadsheet from the DEC phosphorus calculator, but I just wanted to reemphasize when we use the DEC calculator to calculate phosphorus reduction and combining, you know, both the floodplain potential restoration and upsizing the bridge, we did get a notable estimate. So the estimate for first year reduction for kilograms per year was 184, and then after year one was about 94 kilograms per year. So I just wanted to point that out, that it did certainly measure up in that sense from P reduction. And then I do want to get to this video. I just had a couple of photos, but I want to show you the video because my photos don't do as much justice, because I had to show up the day after, because I literally couldn't get off Elmore Pond Road. But this is after the water started to go down. You can see it's still very high, you know, it's looking upstream from the bridge. That's starting to look downstream. And again, the water had already gone down at this point. There's the bridge again, but I was gonna see if I could just. I think I have to get out of this first. I would just show you this really quick clip. That's right here that Paul was with us today had provided. How is this gonna work? Can I still speak hearing? Is it?
Well, you might have to go to, if you open it up in a second tab, you might have to go to that.
I still see my presentation.
Very cool.
Oh, you know what? I had to re-screen share. That's what it is. Okay. So if I just screen share the right thing, there we go. Okay, you see that now? Yes. All right, and can we go back to the beginning? All right, okay, so this is a video that shows the area like completely engulfed in water. Sorry,
So that's Gulf Road.
yeah.
That's my driveway.
That's
So that's your drive. Oh, there's your
driveway.
okay.
Yeah, you
Is
see
it from Gulf Road? Or from the bridge?
It's just standing at the end of my driveway. Or,
Yeah.
I come from looking at my driveway.
I'm sorry, I can't use the voice thing because otherwise it'll echo. But yeah, that gives you a sense of
And
just
that
how
is
much water there
probably-
was.
That is probably. So the pictures that you showed previously. Were probably 5 feet below the bridge.
Mhm.
At this point here, it was still probably a good foot, maybe 2 feet below the bridge. An hour after this, maybe 2 hours most, it was at the bridge. And actually over the bridge. So,
So that's what I have. So I'll entertain other questions. And Paul, thank you for the additional context of flooding. Appreciate that.
So we did have a couple of questions go up. I'm gonna try and get to the people that had the questions longest. I think Ken had a question online. In the chat. I don't know if you can pull up the,
His question was MRGP applies public road question mark? That's what he said.
for bridges.
No.
Not typically.
Yeah, and this is. This is more of a, I just want to point out like a longer term planning effort, because that that bridge overall, components of it are still in fine condition. It's just sustained some flood damage over the years, especially like along the abutments, but. So this is more of a long-term planning effort. This wouldn't. The bridge itself would not be a priority for V-Trans right now. Let's just put it that way. It's more of about the flood mitigation and restoration opportunities and like, what can we do on a larger scale?
Do we have any other questions in the chat or online?
But the bridge is undersized from what I saw, isn't it?
Yes, severely undersized. Yeah, so the again, it's a 10% design, but when SLR was out there, they measured the existing bridge around maybe existing span 41.5, and they were the channel in some areas, the river channel is more like 70 feet, 70-foot span. So it's severely undersized, yes.
Megan, so, but also it sounds like the height of the bridge needs to be adjusted. And if you don't want to have it plugged.
Right, you would, right, the height and the span, you wouldn't want it to be replugged like in the 2019 storm.
All right, we're going to go to Erin and then Karen.
So I have a few questions. The title of this project is called Gulf Road Bridge Replacement and Floodplain Restoration. So part of the preliminary design that you're proposing is for SLR to look at what that bridge replacement would be, right? So everything we're talking about, like length, width.
Yeah,
height.
that and the floodplain
That-
restoration and
Yes.
other flood mitigation alternatives.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that might, make sense and would have really greatest impact in terms of, reducing flooding, reducing erosion.
Yep.
And in turn, reducing phosphorus.
So I'm
Yes.
curious if the town or the planning commission is looking at upstream of your property, because there are several, well, speaking for Vermont River Conservancy, we have several river corridor easements upstream of Paul's property. And so I'm just curious, like, if this does go to final design, that's at that location, but there's places upstream that are also having, are being flooded, and it sounds like through that North Wolcott Road mitigation, flood mitigation study, if there are like other projects coming down the line. So that's one question that I just had, like two about a map, the maps that you showed. I just
Yeah,
maybe you want to answer that.
so I think as I noted, this is like one area of
Yeah.
focus. And then there's, we've been working kind of with partners along the Wild Branch. We worked with Fish and Wildlife, and they did restoration more closer down near Route 15. It's a channel restoration, and then we're working with the town on the town-owned property, the North Wolcott Rec Field, north of this. So that's kind of looking more at like floodplain restoration and state stabilization efforts through a flood resilient communities fund grant,
Okay.
and that's in final design phase at this point. It's not finalized, but it's in progress.
Okay, awesome. And then just real quick back to the first map that you showed, with the wetlands and the flood hazard areas.
Yeah.
So it might just be my eyes because I'm having some eye problems lately, but I see class 2 wetlands in that olive green, and then all that red to me shows that's a class 1 wetland, but is that actually the AE, the flood hazard area?
I think it is.
I have to bring up the presentation again. Or if you, let's see.
Because I don't think it's a class 1 wetland. I didn't have a chance to look it up, but in my eyes, I was like, oh, that's like really red to me, and that's
Yeah,
the
I
red.
think the
Okay.
class,
I think it's the flood.
it's the
the
flood.
flood, okay.
Actually, I think, sure.
But that olive green is still the class 2 wetland, is that correct?
Now let's just.
That's the way I see it.
Okay,
The difference in the flood hazard area, so AE actually has a base flood elevation, so they know what the
Sharing.
elevation is. Versus zone A. Which is different from that.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're seeing is the AE,
okay,
so the floodplain area. Sorry, it's my screen, it's really tiny on my screen. That, I've noticed that gets a little confusing sometimes, the A&R maps is the coloration of the wetlands versus
Yeah.
Matrix on.
the
That's
versus the,
okay.
floodplain area, but yeah, it's, I think a lot of what you're seeing is floodplain, it's
What are the?
not a
hybrid-
class one.
So I'm going to go to Karen
Oh, yeah,
first.
sure.
Hi, so the first question is, and I never can keep track of emails that go across my desk about projects, because there's so many of them, but so did Stacy look at this project? Stacy
Yeah.
Pomeroy, the river engineer? I mean,
Yeah.
the river scientist?
Good question, Karen. Yeah, so Stacy was out in the field with us. We had a initial visit a year ago as part of that North Walkup flood evaluation study.
And what did she say specifically about this reach, the area above and needs?
Yeah, she was overall supportive of the projects, and I think we all recognize that as we get further down, closer to the implementation phase, this is a project that might require multiple funding sources. So we definitely talked about that a little bit, like visit. And I recognize that that's likely going to be the case.
Yeah. And is there, so I and the landowner is here, right? I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Paul is with us.
Paul, hi, Paul. So it looks like, Paul, you own the a fairly large parcel that goes to the edge of the river and back to where the this map sort of shows.
Yeah, I own from the bridge, basically the corner of the bridge, about, I think it's about 2,000 feet up the river. There's 73 acres there in the total parcel.
Yeah.
1.5 of which are in an easement with BRC.
Yeah, I guess so here are my thoughts. The first is, yeah, it seems like there could be other funding sources, which Megan would know about, especially for the bridge replacement. And the money, though, that this group can provide that is going to be harder to get is actually floodplain restoration. And so that might be an area that they want to make sure that the sort of the perfect idea, the perfect restoration of floodplain, upstream, first, identified area could be, could be identified, because it looks like this little curve here is not natural, that, the stream wants to do something else. That are there berms where there could be more floodplain, created above?
Yeah.
So considering kind of like Aaron was saying too, is looking upstream as well, considering. Upstream.
Do not just around the bridge, but what would it do to reduce floodplain? And to keep in mind, I mean, the floodplain exists just because of elevation of this land. It does extend, over the driveway, Paul's driveway, and I'm not sure that increasing the span of the bridge, to what degree is it going to help out? Some floods maybe, but I think that should be maybe clarified too, to basically balance between, well, what are you going to get from floodplain enhancement upstream versus the bridge itself?
Yeah,
because then that could, I'm sorry, just to finish, so that could help then this group prioritize projects like where are you going to get the most floodplain enhancement? Because that's where you're going to get your phosphorus reduction, by showing how many square feet of phosphorus of floodplain is reconnected with the river.
Yeah, I was definitely would want to look at, I mean, we're looking at alternatives, how effective they would be in terms of mitigating flooding, reducing phosphorus.
Yeah,
seems like, it where the bridge gets most impacted is when it would plug up, basically. But otherwise it kind of takes its different directions sometimes from the way the Wild Branch is flooding, but it's certainly still flooding the road and near Paul's property.
Yeah, for clean water funding, we wouldn't, or it wouldn't pay for, I don't think necessarily increasing capacity to pass large debris so much. It's really about, well, I guess in the end, what we do is we count, we need floodplain enhancement, more floodplain, and that's what we're counting. And the benefit of not plugging the bridge and not is a co-benefit because that affects infrastructure. But the river doesn't really care, if, you know. So keep that in mind as well. That, and I know that there might be a balance. This group might want to balance between, well, do you put your money into helping replace the bridge, or do you put your money into helping restore the floodplain of the stream altogether? And when we look at what your, you know, the QUISP formula grant sectors are, it's natural resource restoration. So theoretically, that would or could be the focus of this project and the goal of the funding.
So Ken had a question about, has a hydraulic study been done yet? And I think the answer is no, not yet.
The answer is I'd have to look into it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's possible that V-Trans has done one, but I just don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Aaron,
Just a point of note, I did see in the summary for this project that there would be, project budget includes hydraulic modeling. So that's something that would be done, SLR would do as part of that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's different than for the bridge.
Right, so that makes me think that maybe there isn't a firm hydraulic study yet, or there isn't really an adequate one at this point. So it looks like, yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. So as part of the cost estimate, it would include a hydraulic study, and SLR, you know, has started to model the well branch through some of these efforts in terms of flood modeling. So they certainly would do that.
questions in the chat?
No other questions in the chat, although there was a comment that I was going to make. If I may. Yeah, one of the things that sitting in my seat I've encountered are situations where we'll have project names or project titles that can be misleading or confusing. This is an application that was filed for a specific type of project, and that's important because flowing from that, no pun intended, is a series of, there's a definition, performance measures, and milestones. So the work will need to do what DEC says is required when you are doing a floodplain stream restoration project, preliminary engineering design. That's what this request is for. Karen knows this, but I had made an inquiry, and when I talked earlier about possible tweaks, I had made an inquiry, people in DC being pulled lots of directions, so I haven't got an answer yet. But the description or the definition for this project type with respect to things like bridges says, or removal / retrofit of river corridor / floodplain encroachments or in-stream structures. Boiling that down, it's removal / retrofit of a bridge. And so, although there's the long-term view about a bridge replacement, I'm waiting for confirmation from DEC. But I think getting out of our heads this idea that there's a bridge replacement that's any part of the design of this, it may be that there's something that,
Right,
as
it's
Karen mentioned,
really a small component.
Yeah.
And like Paul said, there's some instances where, I mean, it is severely undersized, but it's a small component of the piece of the pie, you know, because certainly have to look at different options to provide the most effective, like Karen said, floodplain enhancement, and upsizing the bridge might just be a little note, you know, like might be a little flag on the design, you know, as part of the overall holistic approach.
You still have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered what hydric soils are.
Wet soils that you find in wetlands.
yeah, they're indicative. So if you don't have wetland information, hydric soils is
Gives you-
a fair surrogate.
Any other questions?
There was a chat and a comment from Ken. State could do the study, no charge is what he says.
For a hydraulic study, and that's usually that sort of generalized study, it sounds like.
Yeah.
with hydraulic modeling, that's a little bit different, and that's something that's proposed for SLR to do in this.
Right, SLR does like full blown
Yeah.
flood modeling, so that's
Right.
more advanced than, you know. the
You usually,
hydraulic
when you get
study.
into bridges, you usually need to go that step beyond that V-Trans
Right.
basic hydraulic.
This didn't show up on the ANR of the wetland restoration site, did it? With all the hydro,
No,
there was a layer called wetland.
yeah, and I think that it's not showing here either. No, I think so.
I can look.
All right, any other questions or comments? Do you want to entertain a motion? I'm seeing some head nods. All right, does anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the proposal.
Motion, do we have a second?
I second, Aaron.
Any other questions, comments, changes?
Just
Steve?
to clarify, and by accepting, you mean to direct fundings to. That's,
Correct.
your rule is really to just say, okay for funding, and so accept, I just want to make sure that
Okay.
there's no ambiguity,
Right.
that you've approved funding for it.
So, motion has been clarified. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I abstain.
Very good, so noted. Motion carries, and thank you.
Thank you, yes, and I will stop sharing.
And we'll do the dam removal project.
In my video.
So
There we go.
do we have anybody that wants to move into the center role, or you?
As far as that, I don't know if there are any,
Is Ron on?
oh, so Ron was going to be upstairs. I thought he would be coming down, but unless, did he join?
You wanna go check, Tori can go look for Ron real quick.
Yeah, that would be great.
Um,
He was here and then he needed to do
Yeah.
another meeting. He was,
cause I think Ron had, some photos and a few things, so they like share by project.
Thank you.
and if we
Thank
can
you.
take
Take care, thanks a lot.
a brief,
All right, so I think we're going to take a quick 5-minute coffee bathroom break,
Sounds good.
in the restroom.
and we'll come back at 10:46.
That sounds great. Right.
They say the restrooms are down.
Oh, my God, go, beat me to it.
You got one restroom?
I think there's just one. There's probably, yeah. I know. Good scratch. Sitting a while. So like a whole deal. Yeah. Okay.
How many parcels of land, how much acreage you have in wild?
I could look that up. I don't know if it's up in my head. Yeah.
I mean, I don't live far, but I'm a little bit familiar.
Yeah. Showing, I think it's still living here.
I mean, it's just a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
So. And, yeah. Saw a lot of debris up at that ball field. That just.
I'm gonna go up there, this afternoon.
Not big, well, I mean, I didn't stop, but it looked like, you know, part of the trunk of an old tree was.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
I'm not surprised.
trees. Vermont Fish and Wildlife planted.
Yeah, get up further downstream. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah. That, they just recently did that work.
I don't know how long ago. I mean,
What
well,
was
we
they,
did the spraying was very
Yeah.
recent, but
what
I
was the,
planted.
the spraying,
Well, it's supposed to be some to keep in, you know, like
Oh.
sort of weeds and stuff away from the trunks of the trees.
yeah.
So,
All about.
Yeah,
bridge,
it's really-
what dollar you get it.
North Bridge
yeah,
being
absolutely.
really small. That's what because I had fish downstream of there and it just struck me.
And shoving more water downstream.
When the trees, I think even the area where trees.
Yes, that's on Weed Road.
Hmm.
They had a
Wow.
big,
So easily
a
eroded.
big.
Sure, for sure.
Huge.
Well, then,
And it just blew it out, blew the whole thing out.
Yes.
During the 11th one. And
my last name?
Yeah.
Debris.
I remember I was
Debris.
running then, but. And it was at a meeting and I suggested, why don't you just get the road down?
Yes.
So it really.
And your
small.
Greensboro. then-
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
With no, you're not displacing all that material, then that's a good one.
It's like in Johnson, they closed the office there.
Sure.
Now they're raised that.
Saw that part.
They raised that.
We can reach that
Yeah.
one. Should we
Be
do
a high park.
Turn around, bell.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
no, but when you.
I mean, I got there like 15 minutes, 20
The
minutes.
blowout, yeah.
You better off, this is good. And
They're out on the lower.
it's supposed to be.
It's really great. Remember, you know.
North of St. Albans, so
Yeah,
going to a.
yeah, no, that was a good point.
It looks like the grade is very much.
Double check.
Yeah.
Lowest week.
Right. The water kind of already.
You were racing very well.
I just, you know, lost the whole area.
Really. Yeah, it's in the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is,
Right.
Paul's.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just, I didn't go to that.
You know, it's quite a lot of land. She's still
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah, so linear.
So did we find that?
This is.
Was there?
Is up to that, beyond, so this is where he was talking about the erosion.
Well, he has retired and he has started
He-
a consulting
he's not-
business.
We want to talk.
And he, as part of that consulting business, he's an interim person here and he was also just hired to do
There's
some
another
work
side of
for
ours,
Johnson.
Craft.
You know, you could
Also in the Wild
use it.
Ranch on North Market Road.
And there was, there was some special meeting that had to do with Johnson that he was taking upstairs.
People
And he was gonna bring it down.
So you
Um,
essentially don't own the land. You just gotta eat.
You have to eat
And they have to promise not to eat.
Mhm.
What's the last one?
Correct.
That
So
is
this
the
is
last
another-
application.
This is another bend
I
of
mean-
the river.
I was at the same visit,
So we try to keep running. Yeah, it's just right upstream, so you know, the river bend.
So
Here.
Um,
I don't have
Meters.
photos, but you
This is.
presentation is not required. There's nothing that.
Yeah, that's
this
just like
group
the.
has said there's,
I mean, it looks sandy.
no, it's not required.
That's just.
Yeah. Yeah,
So maybe we
These
can
are
bring up
trees
some
and-
access.
I think that's it. I think Falls is the
It's on board.
farthest one.
What does that mean?
Downstream.
It took a while, but
No,
it was starting to clear,
Okay, so
like way.
he'll be here momentarily. So, yeah,
Yes, I think the gentleman.
Here a lot sooner than. The upper Lamoille.
And there's only one back.
You capture, yeah, the ground, I guess.
oh, I do have his name down.
Oh, okay, okay,
It's a, but that's a,
yeah.
it's really a bigger screen. than that.
Right, yes.
Like, so-
Oh, the hard, yeah, here, okay.
You start to increase after that
So
fall
different
line,
from
Yeah.
2019.
and then begins to pick up. I mean, there's some tributaries that come in.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. My friend lives most of the year on. Passing.
There we go.
That's in.
Yeah, she wants to.
Do you have
Just
something
about
you can
like-
share on,
Her name is Angela Apicelli.
Off the top of my head,
or do you want?
She-
Dean to
She
just,
works at Marsh,
Dean,
actually.
share your- what's
Yeah.
the-
It's cool there.
yeah, you guys have all of the information that I, it's a really, yeah, it's a really
Yeah, like
early.
family. Beautiful.
notice
log
type of
cabin. But they live in New Jersey.
So we're gonna be
But they
in
come
1 minute, we're waiting for data to return, but we'll have
And she
to
has to give it out for 2 months.
Excellent.
A little bit
You
of a
can sit
bummer.
here on replay. Wanna talk
Okay.
to the group?
Sure.
There's.
If we are still recording, and I believe we are. Yeah, I don't want to hold things up.
So Dean, if you're ready,
Yeah.
if you're queued up, Ron, do you want to give us a quick overview?
Sure, I can. The town of Hyde Park was agreeable to accepting a donation of a 1/4 acre piece of land along adjacent to a town highway. Part of that deal, which was really clearing up an estate, was the town buying, acquiring a old mill dam, as best I could tell. The history is a little iffy because there's some mixed opinions that they actually harvest ice from there. So that's the historical. Below that, within about 25 feet or so, is a large town culvert. So the dam and the culvert, we think, function now for beaver prevention. So we're nicknaming the existing dam, which is a low height dam that's failing. There's huge chunks of concrete that are gradually peeling off the main structure, headed towards the culvert. It hasn't done that yet. But it's serving, I don't know if you're familiar with beaver bafflers, but the existing concrete is almost doing that. So the town highway crew does not have an issue at all with repetitive dam clearing of the culvert that's really nearby. So our apprehension, if you will, through the study part is there a copacetic, mutually agreeable solution to stabilizing that structure or removing the structure and not automatically encouraging the beaver to start using the culvert as their new dam location or the town road. So that was beyond our capacity, thus we said. Karen Bates had a site visit, Megan was there, we're just trying to brainstorm, and it's just the dam safety wants some hazard assessment. It's just beyond our ability to even start the scientific review of what the options are. Without any looking at it, then that dam will just continue to exist, and from time to time, the beaver do build up and flood a nearby farm field, which is the Mennonite farm on the west. There's homes on the east, but they're super elevated above the low area. 4 or 5 homes that you can sort of see that kind of come up Centerville Road. The dam itself, as far as I can tell, is really strong. They built it really well. I mean, we have historic pictures of when it was built. It was built with forms and poured concrete, and it was meant for almost a commercial. It wasn't a small dam that somebody just haphazardly put in there. So I don't know how deep it is. We don't know how, what kind of condition it is from a hazard assessment. It's just been the way it is for the last going on 90 years at this point.
Did they replace a dam that was there already?
No, this was there was one of the images we have during construction, because it was built for a commercial purpose, is what we're thinking, is that somebody in 1932 wanted to start a mill operation there, and they needed the logs to float down or whatever the purpose was. It's really sketchy history going back that far. Nobody can remember it being there before that major construction, to answer your question. There's just no history there. We know that there was a wooden truss bridge at that time that spanned a much bigger distance. You see that in the background of the dam construction photo, but other than those 2 tidbits, totally looks like new construction in 1932. And at some point that lower culvert, the bridge went away, the culvert went in, and somebody remembers 1970s that current culvert being put in. And I don't really know, I don't think there was any relationship to the dam at that point. It was just the town needed to get a stronger structure. Wood into the steel pipe that's in there now. We don't have any plans to do any work on the pipe. The highway crew loves it because it's a low maintenance site for them. The beavers are away, the structure's still good. It's not on our capital plan to replace. The reason the town bought or accepted, I guess, the donation of a 1/4 acre was simply because it's adjacent to the highway and the culvert inlet is on the 0.25. So we wouldn't have to deal with any kind of easements or right of ways to eventually replace that culvert. Part of the idea to assessing that dam removal or stabilization, whatever comes up out of it, is to address that culvert relationship because they're so close. Right now, there's probably a little bit of a risk that the dam continuing to fail will eventually damage or block the culvert, and then we'd have to deal with it. Right now, we don't have any plans to do that because the failed dam is just falling over. It's not rolling into the culvert or anything like that. But so that's the story. We really, like I said, we're doing as much research. We just acquired the property in March, so it's not a long-term town property, but we do know that there's no high town maintenance on the town culvert. We don't believe there was any maintenance on the dam. I think that was just a structure and new owners came and they weren't using it, and then Mother Nature is doing her best to just kind of work it through the natural degradation process eventually, and it will probably breach at some point. The chunks that are leaving now are substantial enough that there's something weird with the concrete. It's not like flaking off, it's chunks, almost like when they formed it up, they formed up in layers or something, and then it's set, and then they put another layer on top maybe without a continuous pour, which is what they usually do today. So that's all I know. We're looking for the funding to do all those assessments, to see the scientific assessments, phosphorus reduction, getting rid of the sediment, and dealing with the fish passage, which is probably pretty hard right now because the fish can get around a beaver dam, but they really can't get over this except for the failed. There's one failed section where they might be able to swim up a pretty steep grade, but the fish biologists figure that one out.
So any questions for Ron? There are none in the room right now. Any questions online? Do I still have everybody at this point? Oh, Karen, thank you. You've raised your hand.
Hi, yes, hi, Ron. And so I know that Stacy went out there and looked at it, and what did she say about floodplain restoration or what the natural resource benefit would be?
Well, other than the fish passage, there appears to be a huge amount of sediment behind the dam. It's in a really flat, long area that travels hundreds of feet upstream. That's sort of almost at the same elevation. When you look at the aerial photos, you can see it. And right now downstream, just below the road, it's a pretty rapid slope. It's almost like little mini rapids. So once that dam breaches or it's removed, I think that downstream area, even though it's got small rapids, would still allow fish to get up to, and they're being blocked by the dam at this point. So it was a combination of the sediment behind the dam and the fish passage that we were thinking of. We don't think there's any structures at risk necessarily from it. There's no structures that are at risk of flooding downstream or upstream from the natural rainfalls and things like that. We don't have any reports of that from the current condition. So is the current condition the best? I always have that option of do nothing. That may be do a nothing option. We don't know that yet. So
what I'm asking specifically is to help this group assess the importance is the phosphorus reduction that could be assigned to the project. So AOP, it's a co-benefit that they would review. But the phosphorus reduction for dam removal, I don't know that they look at, do they look at sediment removal and calculations of that? Seems to me that was an issue, that it was done, but it's not part of the phosphorus reduction calculation. Anybody remember?
You guys.
So that might be something we could look at because and if it's downstream of the culvert, you said it's rapid, so that sounds like to me that maybe it's bedrock, it's steep slope. And so that a problem would be, and where you could assign phosphorus reduction is if downstream there was incision of the stream because of a lack of flows being restricted from the dam. And if Stacy didn't see that because of the condition of this downstream, then again, it may not provide phosphorus reduction that would allow this project to rank high once it got to the point of implementation.
So some things to look into, but isn't a dam removal in and of itself, however, there will be a wetlands restoration, usually when you have a dam removal, a component of this floodplain restoration.
And that's what I kind of thought.
Yeah, so, right, one of the,
Maybe getting at
one of the,
broader
yeah,
project.
no, exactly. When we were looking at the post on a removal, the upstream is assumed to be the classic meandering, really good functioning wetland habitat from our guess. It's underwater, but some of the aerial photos, you can't even see that brook because the vegetation, the stream is diluted and it's kind of making its way through a long flat area. So in the sense of that, we'll recreate sort of the natural environment with the dam removal, which has been, impeding water and creating a small pond. So that's,
Yeah, no, I see that benefit. But again, just trying to shove it into the
no, I'm not trying to make up a project that's not approvable, but we wanted to make sure that we had this discussion to see where it would rank, because I think there's other options, other funding streams potentially that we might have to explore. We did really want to get the dam assessment done too, because that would be the big question of, is the do nothing okay? I don't know that answer.
Can I add something?
Megan? Yes.
Sorry, I have to come to the mic. I did just want to add something that I remember Stacy mentioning when she was out in the site with us. And I think it was a follow-up too. Ron actually did initially start to prepare a flood resilient communities fund application for this, but it actually was Stacy who said, well, this is really more of a clean water project. You should go through the QUISP or block grant funding. So I did just want to mention that Stacy was supportive of that.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good. And the only thing with the wetland restoration is if it's one type of wetland already, which means it's you got some open water and you're returning it to a different type of wetland, I don't know that you would get any credit for it. So right now it's just a matter, the only comments I'm putting in is it going to end up with enough phosphorus credit to be a priority project? And maybe we need to do the design first.
Yes.
Yeah, isn't there a way that a dam prevents healthy floodplain restoration of a road? I mean, isn't there a way that occurs
Yes,
mechanically? Yeah, I mean, I'm just
maybe that's,
throwing that out, and also in terms of buildup of phosphorus behind, an impediment like a dam, that also would seem to be a problem.
It
It's
can
not,
be, it can be tricky because you do have, and this is again, a preliminary design. So that's hopefully something that would be answered is there going to be a contribution of, once that channel is restored, there might be some additional phosphorus contribution, short-term, long-term. I think these are all things that might be too soon to tell, and hopefully the preliminary engineering design would get at that.
Yeah.
Gene?
You have phosphorus calculations in your application. Can you tell me who prepared them?
So,
Okay,
yes, we did just using the basic DEC phosphorus calculator.
okay. And based on that, I just wanted to flesh out a little bit of what Karen was asking. The annual reduction for the dam removal, it's pretty good. It's 18 and half kilograms per year, and there's a one-time, and I know these numbers are speculative, but relative to many projects, even with it calculated just as a dam reduction, removal, it's good removal. And if the project becomes broader, and I think that's what I was hearing, or how I was interpreting Karen's comment, is that maybe calling it a dam removal is too limiting. And if it is too limiting, and we're looking at it as really a multifaceted project, the phosphorus reduction is going to be even better from where I'm sitting. So from the standpoint of the QUISP, I'm not concerned at this stage about the phosphorus reduction.
Any other questions online or questions in the chat?
Is there one landowner that owns the whole pond area?
I think we have. Some of those house lots come down the hill, you know, that are on the east side of the pond. There's one owner on the west side.
Has anybody researched back enough to when the dam was created to see if anybody has any private rights to that dam?
We have not done any search on adjoining property owners, so our understanding is that the quarter acre had a mill and the dam and some other small structure all squished up against the road. So the evidence so far is it's independent of anybody else, but there might be
Often dams go, there's.
there might be ice rights or something like that.
Rights,
Yeah, whatever.
And if it is just as, if it's as new as you say it is, I consider 32 new for a dam.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be too difficult to do a search for that.
Yeah, no, we can check that early in the process too, because we'd have to get the release on that.
Yeah, I mean, if the dam disappears, all of a sudden somebody shows up and said, hey, wait a minute, in my title, back in 1932, I had. You know, someone paid me compensation or whatever, just a thought. That's good.
Any other questions or comments, or shall we consider making a motion? There's some intense screen.
I'm just looking at a map.
Yes.
Lot of stuff.
Yeah. So this is again, a proposal to do a preliminary design or study.
And green is asked for a hazard assessment.
Okay,
So sort of combo with
great.
overall site analysis, maybe some history. Easements.
Yep.
Elevations, how big is this thing, is it hidden, you know, all those kind of.
Sure.
Yeah, and then we have I think we want to take it to 1, 2, or 3 options too, where to go next.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody wants to create a motion? To recommend for funding?
I create a motion to recommend for funding.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And anybody abstaining? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will get back to my emergency files.
Thanks, Rob.
Future solicitation schedule and process. I believe there's a recommendation from staff to go to 4-month process.
Yeah, people should be seeing on the screen something that some of you have already seen in a different context. I haven't made any changes to it, but it's floating in the proposal, doesn't require a definitive action today. But yes, we're currently on a 3-month schedule. My recommendation or my ask of the group is to consider going to a 4-month schedule. I've also put on the table in another basin, the Missisquoi, something that I have seen done in Basin 5, which is the northern Lake Champlain, that has to do with whether there should be a pre-application process. The Missisquoi Basin has made it fairly clear that that isn't something that they desire, but I just wanted to mention that as a possibility if people felt like a pre-application process would be beneficial. If there was a pre-application process, then that extends the overall review period. It means potentially more meetings or perhaps having a subcommittee. But here we are in July. If we go to a 4-month schedule, then the next prioritization would be in November. You wouldn't be looking at another meeting like this one until around Thanksgiving. Now, as a result of the discussion in the Missisquoi Basin, there was also some, and so if November, then March, then July, that would be the schedule. I'm appreciating that something that was mentioned before may apply here, and that is there might be reasons to avoid the summer. And I have worked up some schedules. They weren't in the packet. I haven't got them ready, but I just wanted to make people aware of the fact. So really the questions to have the group discuss to some degree or other is, do you think there should be preview applications? I think that may be an easy one to dispose. And then are you okay with the idea of a 3-month schedule? I'm sorry, 4-month schedule. And if we do that, then do you feel like it might make sense to structure the schedule so that we avoid the summer? In which case I would come back at the next meeting with something that fleshes that out.
So let's take that sort of in 3 parts, and let's start with the pre-application process. Is there anybody that would like to advocate before or for or against the pre-application process? Any strong feelings one way or another?
So what would it do?
What would it do? That's a good question. And I have raised this because I've seen another WIC do it. I am not necessarily, I'm not advocating for it, but they feel that it's beneficial to the applicant and to the WIC to have a pre-application and a presentation that happens before the final application is made. And then there's the discussion and the vote. So the things that you could pick up on are more information, earlier feedback, and things like that.
So it would assist the applicant in understanding what they need to provide.
I think it could assist the applicant in different ways. It could help shape the project.
I think there's that can occur without a pre-application process, but I think a pre-application process is really, I think, meant to narrow the field of applications. If we were getting in a bunch of applications right now, it would help to narrow it down and sort of funnel it and create a process where, well, you didn't pre-qualify for this round, but maybe for next round. Dean, is there a lot in the pipeline coming at us, or?
No, we need to continue to prime the pump, so to speak.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like pre-applications are necessary at this point.
I'm not recommending it. I wanted to just cover the bases and make sure that no one else heard that there were pre-applications done somewhere else, and why aren't we doing it, so to speak.
Does anybody online feel strongly or have a comment on this? I see a raised hand, Lauren.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if we need a pre-application, but it does sound like maybe like this is way more discussion about each project than we have in the Missisquoi Basin. So I don't know if there's like some medium ground of just talking through what eligible projects are and key things to look for as kind of a training opportunity there. I know DEC has been putting out a bunch of training opportunities, but just to try to get everybody on the same page about what is and isn't eligible, because it feels like that's really where we're getting caught up, and having that in early stage before you apply might be helpful. Yeah.
I think that can be done with outreach between staff and applicants and not necessarily a pre-application process. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, two things. I think, yes, that's true. Our approach as a QUISP has been to get applications before the WIC and give the applicant the benefit of the doubt, not to be, overlooking their shoulder too much to question, and then acknowledging that there could be questions. But if the WIC if the council is supportive of an application, we need that. Before we can do anything, we need the WIC's approval. And so if WIC thinks the concept is a good concept, we will make sure that the loose ends get tied up before it's done, rather than holding everything up front, particularly when it's an application for design work. And some of those questions are still open questions. But yes, Lauren is right. There are education opportunities. There are more that could be done as far as training. And it takes time for people to climb that learning curve. the other thing is that sometimes there are open questions of policy that DEC hasn't resolved. And do we sit around and wait until private roads are fully hammered out? Or do we see applications brought forward and we basically keep the pressure on? And we've essentially chosen the latter course.
So unless anybody wants to make a motion to change the process we have now and add a pre-application, I'd like to move our conversation into the reviewing applications every 4 months. Does everybody feel comfortable with that, generally speaking? I'm seeing head nods around the table. I don't know what say you, the online crew. I'm seeing a head shake about no, not every 4 months.
Thumbs up by Emily.
Okay,
There was no other questions.
okay, all right. I'm trying to keep, my head's moving back and forth here, so sorry. And then finally, does anybody want to advocate for more meetings or less meetings? The meeting, to be determined by Dean every 2 months. How say you all?
Yeah, currently we're every other month. The other facet of this is a schedule like November, March, July a good one? Or should I come back with something that makes it not evenly spaced so that the prioritization process avoids the same, which is something that has come up.
So specifically concerned, just to repeat for online people about not having a summer meeting because that kind of,
or at least not having prioritization.
we're not having prioritizations.
Is the way we're operating, do you think it's affecting anybody? Are we slowing people down? Or are we?
Well, we're trying not to, but
Right.
it has not been as fast as we thought it would be. Yeah, I guess that's the answer.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of why that might be? I mean,
Yes.
I expected there would be more application.
Yeah, some of it is that the amount of time that was required to do the upfront master agreement, which when we have a master agreement in place, the task award that actually what we say we're giving you money for and the amount is a pretty easy thing to do. So that took a lot longer than I thought it would, but we are past that hurdle. So I think going forward, it will be better. But there are things that hold people up, I think, are other commitments, floods,
Capacity.
getting access to profession, to consultants and input. And yeah, I think it's a combination of things. And it may be that we're going to be in an uncertain environment for a little while longer.
Yeah, it's gonna be harder to get state folks out to visit sites, maybe possibly.
So I think we have some time between now and next July, and I think that's something you can think about and maybe be adaptive as the landscape changes on us in the next few months. And I think that's absolutely something we could reconsider, but or does anybody want to just have at it right now and say that we're not going to have a funding consideration next July? All right, I think we'll maybe revisit later this fall. I don't think there's anything else. And did you want a motion on any of that or?
I don't require a motion.
All right, conflict of interest guidance.
I wanted to just share word that DEC has issued a draft guidance document just to remind people there are a series of, I think, 9 or 10 chapters of guidance DEC has been working on. One that has been released concerns conflict of interest. I included it in the packet. I'm just going to touch on some high points. We already have conflict of interest language in the bylaws. It's short and sweet and basically repeats what's found in rule. The highlights of that is that it's conflict of interest in the rule is broadly defined. So a lot of things are potentially conflicts of interest. And that's what we're operating under now. What I see the DEC proposal is trying to do is to narrow the definition of conflict of interest. It's emphasizing the financial benefit to the member or the organization. So you can be thinking more about whether or not you're going to benefit financially and less maybe given worry to things that are non-monetary, but that's not all that it is. But I'm just, there is the language in the proposal. If you feel strongly, maybe submit comments. There are some other things that it does. I mentioned this earlier. It clarifies the the question on voting on individual projects versus slates. It says that we can vote on individual projects. If there was a vote on a slate, and the reason why no one would do it is that everybody who's got an application on that slate would need to recuse, which creates quorum issues. But if you are voting on projects individually, then like today, the only person that needs to recuse themselves is the applicant or the sponsor. I'll leave it at that. There are some other things that are addressed, like confidentiality of materials. It's not really clear what it means, but it has the language that I have here. Book members shall treat materials related to RFPs and project solicitations as confidential. I think it's just be discreet. If something's a public record, it's a public record. There's also language in there that says that I, as a QUIF staff member or someone else for the Regional Planning Commission, couldn't have a side gig working with organizations to prepare applications. So that's something that we went through the approval of the minutes very, very quickly. This is maybe one of the more noteworthy things. The guidance points out that if you have a conflict of interest, it must be declared once it's apparent and recorded in the minutes. And something I've said at the last book meeting for Mrs. Koi and in other groups I've worked with is it can be helpful to have something on the agenda that's there every time that says, hey, if you have a conflict about something that we're going to be talking about later, state it then. It's a reminder to point out that you have a conflict of interest. So I had put a little note on the slide with the agenda on it. And going forward, I hope I don't forget next time, I will have something that just notes conflict of interest. Because if you have a relationship with somebody about something that's going to be discussed, we'll do it up front. And then finally, if you change organizations, there's something that says that if you work for organization A and move to organization B and you're still on the WIC, and organization A submits an application, then you wouldn't vote on that application because you worked for them within the last year. After that, you're free to vote, although you can continue to recuse yourself should you feel. It's kind of it's called the statute of limitations. It's kind of an interesting thing to be emphasized, but it's in there. I will leave it at that in the interest of time.
So it's in the conflict of interest is in draft, and public can make comments on the draft.
Yeah, I believe it's posted to the website, and I can't remember if they have a 30-day clock, if that clock is running, but I think they had good intentions by keeping it very, very short, but it does raise new questions.
Sure.
There are comments. Let's see.
In the chat?
Yeah. Oh, that's training. Oh, okay, Ken, I believe. So yeah, Lauren had written, that was a few minutes ago, about training NPR podcast, Brave Little Straight. And Ken, I believe. Okay.
Any other comments or questions in the room? Any comments or questions online?
I'll comment that Brave Little State podcast was really fascinating.
Is that the chain? Why our rivers are more powerful?
No, it's what old streams can teach us about flooding.
With the beavers, yes.
Yeah, what do you?
More than beavers.
Yes.
But
Beavers and colonization.
All right, so I don't know if we now, thank you, Dean. I think those are all very important things, and that's something to stay up to date on in terms of as the landscape changes, we want to make sure that we are following all best recommendations on various areas and conflict of interest guidance. But I think that sort of makes its way into updates and conclusions. And I think that was a really good update. That is a really good podcast that's out there in Brave Little State. Is there anything formally, or do we wish to conclude and we can have some informal discussion amongst the room? I don't know if anybody as.
I've already mentioned the master agreements, the sub-grant awards, things will happen more quickly. Going forward, I have the bullet for operations and maintenance. Operation and maintenance is something that DEC had intended to be a pretty big focus this year. It's been a little bit slow to start. But we will be hearing more about that. And the thing that I want people to remember is that at some point in time, the BWIC will be needing to have a discussion about an opportunity. And the opportunity is a project that was built already. It exists. And no one has the phosphorus credits that the BWIC could decide that's a good project for us to adopt, basically. And by adopting, we get the phosphorus credits and we can direct funding to operation and maintenance. So we don't talk about O&M a lot, but it is a big part of this program and we're inching towards that conversation. Just stay tuned.
Anybody else online have any updates that they'd like to share? Anybody in the room? The sun is finally shining, so if somebody wants to, do we typically move to adjourn? I'm one of those.
I think that's gonna happen.
Okay, very good. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
And I don't think we need to formally vote on it, and we're adjourned at 11:24. And thank you all, and hope you have a safe and dry-ish weekend. If possible.
Thanks, everybody.
Got us adjourned early. Hey, yeah. So how did that feel? I was feeling that because you're asking.